And welcome to Dangerous Ideas, the ethnic cleansing or genocide, whatever you'd like to call it, continues across Palestine. Over 14,000 dead, according to many estimates. Over 8,000 of those are children, millions forced into migrations, homeless for all intents and purposes. We don't even know the true numbers. I'm going to get more into that a little later. And for those who think that the temporary ceasefire and the hostage exchanges means that the ethnic cleansing, the attacks on Gaza do not continue, you would be wrong, because those people still are not being given things like clean water or medicine or the ability to get to functioning hospitals or electricity or food. So, if you were lived in an open air concentration camp and you weren't given food and water, I think you'd still view that as an attack towards you and your family. I don't think you'd be like, oh, it's all peacetime now, just because they're not bombing us. But anyway, in terms of those hostages, I will be bringing you the evidence, the discussion of how Israel is actually lying about how many hostages they're releasing. I'm going to get into the details of that. Barely anybody talking about it. I'll also be getting into why I was just attacked in the pages of Newsweek on this very topic. We'll be talking about that. We'll also get into exclusive footage. I'll show you exclusive footage, drone footage I have from a journalist that I know in Gaza, who the drone footage is of his neighborhood and his house, completely decimated, completely razed to the ground by bombing. I will also be bringing you more admissions on Ukraine, the admissions that continue to come out, stuff, the truth that I and many others in the independent media arena brought to you about 18 months ago, right as the invasion of Ukraine was beginning, the proxy war was beginning. And now we're seeing even the higher level Ukrainians admit exactly what we told you months and months and months and months ago that the mainstream media completely ignored. I'm also at the end of this hour going to bring you, because it's the 60th anniversary of the assassination of JFK. I have a bit of an ongoing series here for you. I will bring you yet another segment at the end of this hour showing you more evidence you probably don't already know about what happened to JFK. All of that and more starts now. So please hit subscribe, hit share, hit follow, and let people know about this. The show only continues due to the generosity of you guys, because as you can see, I have no corporate backers, no corporate sponsors that are willing to make this happen. It's all up to you guys. All right, let's get into it. So this article I have on the screen right now is just from a few minutes ago. This is CNN talking about how the truce may continue, which, when you're cutting off the food, water, medicine, and an ability of people to survive, I don't know if it's actually a truce, at least from one side, but whatever. The cessation of bombing may be extended by 2 days. The way the hostage negotiations ultimately came down, it was Israel's going to release this many, about three. Israel's going to release 3 times as many Palestinian prisoners as Hamas releases hostages. But then they'll also release, if Hamas releases more prisoners, then they will extend the cessation of bombing for another day for every 10 hostages are released, etc. But this also is bringing into a lot of people across America who've been listening to your mainstream media, who have done nothing but watch your mainstream media, who have done nothing but turn on CNN and MSNBC and Fox News and all these horrific garbage outlets. They have not noticed that they're going, what hostages does Israel have to negotiate with? We know that we hear all day that Hamas has hostages, with over 200 hostages. So who is it Israel's releasing? But of course, if you watch my stuff, I've been talking about it endlessly, that Israel has 10,000 Palestinian hostages that they keep in their prisons, almost all of which, many of them are children, almost all of which were, even if they were convicted in a ridiculous, clown court. where it's 99% conviction rate of anybody Palestinian, because they're not actually given a chance to defend themselves. It's an Israeli judge who says, "Oh yeah, sure, you're a terrorist. You're Palestinian. Of course you're a terrorist. Why are we even spending this time here in the courtroom?" That's generally how it works. So you have 10,000 hostages that Israel's been holding. Palestinian, wow. Okay, whatever. Palestine, Hamas has 200 roughly that they're holding. So I'd say that's a slight imbalance on the number of hostages held. But if you watch mainstream media, you don't even know who Israel's holding. You're like, what do you mean Israel has Palestinians they're releasing? Who are they? I didn't know they were holding anyone. 10,000. 5,000 of those came after October 7th. So basically, October 7th happens. Israel runs around and arrests thousands of Palestinians and puts them into prison. Okay. All of that being said, I haven't even gotten to the part where Israel is lying about the trade-off of these hostages. And here I will show you a clip of one of the only outlets to cover this. This is from Al Jazeera. The fact that as Israel is releasing these hostages, they've released about 100, well, as of this reporting from Al Jazeera, they had released about 117 hostages. But as Israel is releasing these hostages, the Palestinians, they're taking new hostages of an exactly equal number. So they're basically pushing one freed hostage out the front door, bringing in a brand new kidnapped hostage in the back door. This is what Israel's doing, and you will not hear a peep of it on American or Western mainstream media. Not a fracking peep. Okay? Here it is.
Someone. In harsh terms, if you look at what's happened with regards to the swap deal as a numbers game, the Israelis have released 117 Palestinians in the last 3 days. And in that same time, they've detained 116 new Palestinian prisoners in areas across the occupied West Bank. There have been raids ongoing since last night into this morning. They really haven't stopped ever since the war began. They've intensified. They were ongoing before the events of October 7th, but just in the last 24 hours, overnight, 64 people have been detained and are now in Israeli custody.
64 as part of that 117. Or 116. So Israel has so-called released, freed 116 Palestinian hostage that they were holding of the 10,000 they're holding. Meanwhile, they have then kidnapped 116 more. So they are intentionally, there's no way those numbers are a coincidence. Even if they were, it doesn't really change the point. But they are intentionally kidnapping an equal number to the number they're releasing in order to say, oh, ha, 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 here you go. Here are your freed hostages, and then turning around and kidnapping more. Could you imagine if this were a standard hostage negotiation? Could you imagine if there was a bank robber and he's holding 20 hostages and the cops say, give us 10 and, we won't come in there guns blazing. And so he gives them 10 and in the back alley, he's kidnapping 10 more. Do you think the cops would go, that's fine? Yeah, that's totally fine. We meant give us 10 of the ones you got. As long as you're getting new ones from somewhere else, we don't care. It's fine. No, they would count that as releasing 0 hostages. If you're kidnapping people in the back door as you're releasing the hostages out the front door, it's not actually releasing hostages. And Israel is doing this intentionally. But as I said, none of this is being covered by your mainstream media. I saw someone mention this in the comment thread, and I was going to bring this up as well. You may have also noticed, if you watch mainstream media, sorry, I got a bit of a cold, that they're showing endless celebrations of Israeli hostages, the ones that were taken by Hamas, reuniting with their family, and the families hugging them and crying and everything. And it's very moving. If you any of that would be moving. It's anytime you see a family reunion of families who thought their loved one was killed or going to be killed, of course, it's moving to everyone, no doubt. But you haven't seen maybe any of that on the Palestinian side. You haven't seen an iota of a second, if you watch mainstream media, American media, Western media, of Palestinians, or at least barely any, of Palestinians celebrating the reuniting with their family members, right? And here is why. And this was actually shown on CNN because, CNN does its best to cover up all of this stuff that Israel needs covered up in order to maintain their apartheid state. CNN does their best, but stuff slips out. Sometimes journalists just actually reveal what's happening because they are not, they don't really abide. They're not, in order to move up the ladder at CNN, you kind of got to abide by just a self censorship, but they don't always do it, or maybe they don't care about moving up the ladder. Maybe they're a new hire and they didn't get the rule book yet. But anyway, here's an example of this slipping out on CNN.
See anything. Israeli authorities blocked off roads, corralled the media into one location, brought the Palestinians in through the back door when they received them, and then only allowed family members to come in very limited single file in individual cars. And there's a reason for that. Because unlike the images of celebration, which you might have seen from Ramallah and the West Bank, here in East Jerusalem, Israeli authorities were better able to enforce the diktat of their far-right national security minister, who has deemed the prisoners released today as terrorists. But not just that, he said any Palestinian who celebrates will themselves be charged as terrorists. I mean, just to break that down a little bit, there is no grounds to call them terrorists because by Israel's own reckoning, those 39 prisoners were 15 minors, 10 of whom were only charged, and 24 women, 23 were detained, not charged, and 10 of the minors were detained, not charged. So it complicates telling this story.
So what she's saying there is that Israel is carefully making it nearly impossible to view or to get video out. I mean, what we're seeing, for those of you listening to the podcast, what we're seeing is clearly some homemade footage, someone with a cell phone videotaping some of this. But Israel made it nearly impossible for those scenes of celebration of family members to be broadcast around the world the way the celebrations of Israeli hostages was being broadcast. So, and I read elsewhere that another way they did this was they would have only one car pull up at a time, and one of the hostages they were holding would be, released to their family in that car, so that you didn't generally have groups of people standing around, groups of families celebrating. But also, on top of the fact that they don't want you to see families celebrating the reuniting of a loved one that has been held in Israeli detention, held and tortured, often in solitary confinement, tortured in other ways, often beaten. The other reason they didn't want you to see that is not just because it moves you, but also because you see the faces of these prisoners that Israel's holding. And guess what? It's freaking kids. It's teenagers. The one we just saw there was probably a teenage girl. And are you really sitting there going, oh, yeah, hardened terrorist? That's what that is. I tell you what, that is one hardened terrorist right there, that 13-year-old girl. Who knows what she's up to? No, you quickly see through it all. You see through the propaganda if you see the faces of these people. It completely upends what they're going for here. And that's why they had to cover it up. That's why they did their best to cover it up. And yet here is obviously a clip from CNN, and Wolf Blitzer looks bewildered. Wolf Blitzer, by the way, coming from AIPAC, that's where he worked before he joined CNN, was AIPAC. And even he seems a little bewildered by the horror show that we're witnessing here by Israel, the ethnic cleansing that they're perpetrating. But okay, I want to get to, here's Aaron Mate saying that Israel could have taken this hostage deal from day one. They chose not to. They chose not to at all because really, and I've said this also from day one, from October 7th, October 8th, is that Israel, A, has wanted something to happen, possibly let it happen. There's a lot of evidence they did let it happen. I've brought you much of that. The fact that troops were reporting that something was going on, that Hamas was amassing troops, things like that, and it was all ignored. The fact that much of the arms that ended up in Hamas militants' hands came from IDF bases, and someone was helping funnel arms to Hamas. The fact that Netanyahu has often said that Hamas was necessary in order to split the allegiances inside Palestine. So that many people in the United States of the ruling elite felt that as well. If you could get a more radical faction, then you could have them not unite. The people not unite, and so I think there's a lot of evidence, and not to mention Israel says that they have the most impressive, amazing surveillance in the world. Yet they had no idea that Hamas has spent 2 years planning and getting hang gliders and bulldozers and all kinds of weapons in order to perpetrate this. And just insanity, that the idea that Israel didn't know something was going to happen. But so they wanted this to happen, and they don't care about the hostages, and they have something called the Hannibal Directive, in which if someone's taken hostage, they just kill the hostage and everyone around them. But Aramante pointed out Israel could have had a hostage deal nearly a month ago, but chose a ground invasion instead. It then rejected the same Qatari brokered deal last week. What changed now? So for those of you thinking that Israel, finally got to a place that they got this deal, no, this deal has been on the table for basically since the beginning of this thing. And Israel's refused because they don't actually, the ruling elite of Israel, the far-right ruling elite of Israel, don't actually care about the hostages. The people of Israel, many of them do care about the hostages. They do want the hostages back. Whereas the Netanyahu and the rest of the far-right ruling elite, they want to create ethnic cleansing. They want to destroy Gaza and own it. They want to move all of the Gazans south and force them into Egypt, into tent cities in the desert. That's their goal. That's what they're aiming for. Aaron Mate asks, what changed now? According to Amos Harel of Haaretz, the Israeli security establishment has developed the understanding that the outcry of the hostages' families is arousing broad public support. So basically, too many people were getting upset that we're just murdering all the hostages and committing a genocide. To continue from what he's saying, and that it will be difficult to continue with a ground maneuver in the southern Gaza Strip should public anger over what will be perceived as abandoning women and children increase. In other words, to keep slaughtering Palestinian women and children in Gaza, Israel must finally stop abandoning the return of Israeli women and children from Gaza. So I think a lot of people don't realize that this deal has been on the table for the entire time, and Israel's chosen not to take it because Israel wants to massacre people. And the protests and the anger within Israel has been growing immensely. Here is a video of the protest outside Netanyahu's house, his private residence. Why is this not playing? His private residence. There we go. Anyway, thousands of people showed up outside Netanyahu's private residence demanding that he end the genocidal bombing and that he step down, that he resign. Now, that does not mean everyone in this crowd is a wonderful peacenik that you and I would really, really love to sit down and chat with. Some of them, I don't know what the percentages are. Some of them, yes, are very much people who want peace, people who, whether they think October 7th was a horrific act of terror or not, don't think that committing genocide against Palestine just like fixes it. They don't actually want to see hospitals and schools and children bombed just endlessly in order to what? Some kind of celebration to get them back, some kind of vengeance. You're going to kill a baby, literally turning off the electricity to hospitals so babies in incubators actually do die, as opposed to the propaganda that we've heard on the other side. What is that? How does that fix what happened on October 7th? It doesn't. And so there are many who you and I would, assuming you are a sane person, you and I would agree with. However, there are also, of these thousands outside Netanyahu's residence, there are people who are even maybe farther right than Netanyahu. And it's not that they care about a single Palestinian. They just think that he did a shit job of protecting them from Hamas. And so they actually want him to step down. They're actually They don't care about any Palestinian children or women or men or innocent or anything. They just want him to step down because he did a bad job. And they don't think he's doing a good job now, and they don't think he's trying to free the hostages, and they don't think that he's actually redeeming himself. So the crowd is kind of a mix of those two. Again, I don't know the percentages, but I do want to show a little bit of this interview with one of the Israeli protesters that was outside Netanyahu's residence. This is him outside Netanyahu's residence during this protest.
Never, for one single moment in my life, have trusted this man. I think he's a psychopath. I think he's a lunatic. Not just I think that. Lots of people. I would never trust him with anything. Not him, not his government. That's all I have to say. They are dangerous people. They're extremists, they're fascists, they're racists, they're fanatics. They don't want peace. They want war because it serves their own self-interest. While most of the people on both sides, you know, Israelis, Palestinians alike, they are the people who pay the price. They are the ones who suffer. They are the ones whose lives are lost while they keep the power in their hands. Netanyahu is just like Donald Trump, just like Milosevic, just like Hitler. These people will do everything to keep power in their hands, and they don't care if everything else crumbles. They can destroy everything just as long as they remain in power.
So, yeah, there you go. I think that is very accurate. And I would say everything he's saying goes for essentially the U.S. empire writ large. And when I say the U.S. empire, I include Israel in that. Israel is really a outpost of the U.S. empire. In fact, RFK Jr. said that himself. He said it's like having a battleship in the Middle East, except he was saying it in a positive light for some insane reason. He was saying Israel's great. It's like having a battleship in the Middle East. But what that protester was saying right there, it goes for all of our imperial leaders. They want to maintain their power. They want to maintain their hegemony, and they're willing to murder just a phenomenal, an insane, a psychopathic number of women and children and innocent people in order to maintain that power, in order to keep that grasp. And they will do it all. Israel is kind of the front edge of what is happening to the American empire. Israel happens to have it happening quicker and harder because they more recently stole the land. They are surrounded not by allies, but by people who are against the apartheid state. And they are the ethnic cleansing and the type of genocide that Israel's involved in is more in your face than the type that the U.S. is involved in with the myriad of coups and economic wars we're perpetrating around the world, as well as the bombing. So Israel's kind of the front edge of things in that you have a cornered tiger, and in order to maintain its power, it only has one tool, and that is bombing. It does not have the tool of diplomacy. It does not have the economic tools anymore. The U.S. used to, and now that is quickly fading. And so the only tool left is just indiscriminate bombing, which we've seen from Israel. We've also seen from the U.S. largely in just the sheer numbers of bombs being dropped by the U.S. Of course, Israel on this tiny 25-mile enclave of Gaza has dropped enough explosive tonnage to be more than 2 Hiroshima atomic bombs. They killed more innocent people in a month than Russia killed in the year and a half of the proxy war in Ukraine, because Israel was aiming for innocent civilians, whereas Russia was trying to avoid them. That doesn't mean I endorse any war. I'm anti-war, but I also think you have to understand the entire premise of any attack or bombing or undertaking of these horrible kinds. In terms of to just wrap up the negotiation on the hostages, I want to bring you this clip from CNN, which is another fascinating clip. It's not quite as much truth as that other one that slipped out with Wolf Blitzer looking bewildered, but in this one you have a top Israeli ambassador of the United States doing U.S. propaganda, pushing out Israeli propaganda on CNN. And you have Dana Bash, who, 99% of her time is a pro-Israel propagandist, trying to endorse and support and manufacture consent for a genocide, for ethnic cleansing, for the various wars that the U.S. perpetrates around the world. That is her job, and she does it well, I guess, as well as you can do horrible crap like that. But she does lightly push back against the Israeli ambassador for a second. And I want to show you her pushback. And then I want to show you also how she then immediately crumbles. She pushes back for a second, and then he throws more garbage at her, and then she just fades away, as if she could never push back twice in a row. She could never hold this guy to any kind of account, really. But it's a fascinating back and forth for a second here. It's only 1 minute long.
39 Palestinian prisoners, we're told, were released today. Do you intend to, along with the potential release of Israeli hostages or civilian hostages who are held in Gaza, to continue to release Palestinian prisoners?
The short answer is yes. Let me just refer to that and remind everybody that the prisoners that we released are people who were convicted for participating in terror attacks. Let's don't forget that Yahya Sinwar was released in such a deal by Israel in 2011. Look what you got.
Yeah, well, a lot of...
Here comes the pushback. Very slight pushback.
Well, a lot of them are accused. Some are convicted, but some have not yet been adjudicated. I think that's...
So... Now, first of all, her pushback is not enough, but he says, let's remember everybody of the 117 that Israel is releasing has been convicted of terrorism. Now, I talked to you earlier and showed you video of how some of these people are teenage girls, teenagers, kids. Apparently, he's claiming they're all convicted terrorists. Now, she then says, well, actually, just to be fair, no. I mean, that's how she should have put it. But just to be fair, they're not all convicted terrorists because not all of them were convicted of anything. Many of them were just charged of something. Some of them have not even been charged with anything. So he's flat out lying. He told her a flat out lie. And you saw how hesitantly she pushed back. She goes, that's just, to be fair, let's just say, not all of them. So she says that, and then here's his response to her saying, yeah, you just told a complete lie, but she said it in a much nicer way.
Some are convicted, but some have not yet been adjudicated. I think that's fair to say.
They went through a legal process in Israel. We didn't kidnap them.
That is true.
We don't arrest people just for nothing.
That's a very important distinction.
What? Now she agrees with him. She just said to him, you flat out lied. Not all of them have been convicted. He said they went through a legal process in Israel. Well, no, they have. If they haven't been convicted yet, they haven't gone through the legal process. They have not completed the legal process yet. On top of that, of course, they're just kidnapping people. Of course, these are teenagers, half of them. Of course, they're just grabbing them. And the ones that they actually have something on that were not just straight up kidnapped, you know what they had? Usually it's that they threw a rock or something like that. Many of the people that Israel arrests, it's that they throw a rock at the IDF, or the IDF, came and harassed them and they pushed back. Or they were on land that the IDF decided was not theirs, when in fact, of course, it's Palestinian land to begin with. There's a million reasons where you could say, oh, they did this wrong thing. They violated the law. Well, Israel's making up all the laws as they go. Any law that you're on this land it's illegal for you to be on. Wasn't this Palestinian land? No, not anymore. It's settler land now. They can do whatever they want. And where is a Palestinian going to turn for actual justice, for an actual fair court proceeding? There is nowhere There's no Palestinian court system that Israel would allow to operate. There is no one they can turn to. Israel comes and says, we hate you. You're Palestinian. You're on the land we want to steal. So we will arrest a certain percentage of you. We will upend your communities. We will do everything we can to ethnically cleanse you. And so even for the ones that are convicted, but like she said, a lot of them are not, but even for the ones that are convicted, convicted of what? By who? By Israeli judges that say, oh, you're Palestinian, you're clearly guilty? It's just so dumb. And of course, she then crumples like a cheap suit. Oh, well, that is true. That is fair. That absolutely, it's fair. By the way, I forgot to thank someone earlier who gave a donation. Thank you so much, Reverend Edmund Bolela, who said, we need to remember that during these challenging times, the U.S. presidential candidate who always supported a comprehensive peace was Yard Rock 2024. You can find out more about Yard Rock 2024 at yardrock2024.com. I am the campaign manager for Yard Rock. So thank you so much, Reverend. That is very true about Yard Rock. Always supported peace. Always been the peace candidate. Always been anti-war. Okay, so I want to move on barely to the discussion of body counts. You may recall that Joe Biden was so the body counts, the death counts in Gaza of those killed by Israel. It's now, many are saying over 14,000. The last update was 11,000, something like 11,700. However, that has not changed in many days. That has not changed in many days. And here is why it hasn't changed in many days, because the Gaza health officials, this comes from the AP, say they lost the ability to count the dead as the Israeli offensive intensifies. So many buildings and so many whole blocks are collapsed, and there is no ability. They don't have the machinery. They don't have the power. They don't have the gas. They don't have the electricity. They don't have the manpower. They don't have the time when they're not being bombed to actually dig up these buildings, remove the rubble, and check and find out who's been killed, how many have been killed. Unlike many earthquakes, this doesn't end. This genocide just keeps going. This ethnic cleansing just keeps going. And so they have lost the ability to actually update these numbers. The last, I said 11,700, 11,078 on November 10th. So that's 17 days ago. So many are saying that it's over 14,000 now, but numbers are hard to get. But you may recall that Joe Biden was casting doubt on the numbers earlier when he said, well, I don't trust anything that comes out of the Gaza Health Ministry. So they're probably making up those numbers, which of course is insane on its face, because when you are dropping enough explosive tonnage to equal the bomb in Hiroshima, the atomic bombs dropped, then of course you're going to have thousands dead. It's not even a question. So it's just such a dumb thing to say. But even the UN, when they have checked whether the Gaza Health Ministry has been accurate on their death counts over the years, they always are. So even the UN acknowledges that the Gaza Health Ministry gives accurate numbers on the dead. So even Joe Biden apparently now is admitting that the numbers had been accurate until they lost count. Washington Post said Joe Biden has privately admitted his very public questioning of the civilian death toll in Gaza was wrong. He also knowingly and defiantly promoted unverified incendiary claims that further empowered Israel's scorched earth attack on Gaza. So it's important to note that this isn't, although this is a very confused man who says crazy stuff all the time, him saying that has an impact. It allows for genocide. It allows for ethnic cleansing. Him questioning these body counts that are accurate allows for the propaganda around the world for people to go, oh, it's not really as many as we're hearing. It's not really tens of thousands. It's not really that many children. No, it freaking is. That's how many, we're talking thousands of children. Many days, 400 children are killed a day in this bombing. And like I said, just because there's been a stop to the bombing for a couple of days does not mean there's a stop to the war on these people, to the lack of water, lack of food, lack of medicine, lack of hospitals. All of that continues. So in many ways, the war continues. But I just wanted to bring that to you, that even Joe Biden privately is admitting these are accurate numbers. Okay, to bring you a first-person story of what exactly this looks like, I know very few people, and I don't mean know like I have hung out with them a lot, but I mean, I am in contact with very few people in Gaza. But one that I am in contact with, and luckily he's still okay, meaning, I guess when you say okay in Gaza, you just mean alive. You mean the person is not, in a hospital struggling for their life at the moment. Well, if you can even get into a hospital in Gaza. Anyway, his name is Mohammed El Saif, and he is a journalist. And here is his drone footage. He's now fled with his family south, as most Gazans in northern Gaza have been forced to do. And here is his drone footage of his former house and neighborhood. For those of you listening on the podcast, it is drone footage of an absolutely entirely destroyed area. I mean, we are talking every building, every last structure pancaked to the ground. This was, and obviously this did not just have to do with the fact that he lived here. This is many people that that Israel was trying to kill, lived in these areas. But they have been targeting journalists. They have been going after journalists. Sometimes they will even call journalists and say they're about to bomb their houses or their neighborhoods. And this footage just shows how thoroughly these areas are. This is not one bomb. This is 10s, 20s, 30s of bombs being dropped on these areas, completely pancaking whole neighborhoods, whole blocks, killing thousands. And luckily, he is okay. He is moving south with his family. He wanted to get this footage out there to show you what the reality is of this genocide. And also to say there is a way to donate to help him out. And anybody out there who is actually able to, maybe you can throw a few bucks his way. Here is his PayPal. It's Mohammed El Saifi. I might have said Saif, but Saifi on PayPal. And I'm showing you there what the handle is. I'll put the link in the comment thread. I mean, honestly, like if 20 of you gave him $5 or something, and I've donated as well, but it would have a huge impact. So, help him out if you can. Just obviously there are tons of ways and tons of people to give to in Gaza. I don't want to act like he's the only one. But he is luckily okay and has fled to South Gaza, where Israel is now threatening to bomb there. Even though they told everyone to flee to South Gaza, South Gaza, they are now saying they may bomb there as well. They may bomb refugee camps there. They have dropped leaflets over some refugee areas saying they were going to bomb those refugee areas, because really the goal of Israel is to force everyone all the way out of Gaza into Egypt. And they're hoping that forcing everyone up against that border will get Egypt to open their borders more than they have. Egypt has generally refused to open their borders, both because they don't want millions of refugees and don't feel they can take care of them. But on top of that, because they don't want to facilitate Israel's ethnic cleansing. And if you say to Israel, sure, send them all our way, no problem, then Israel believes the ethnic cleansing is certainly fine and allowable and not a problem. But yeah, there is the experience of one journalist. Okay, before I go to just Rumble, I want to bring you how Newsweek has decided to go after me. Uh, no, I am a mere couple of sentences in the article, so I don't want to act like it's really about me. But as many of you probably know, or many of you may know, Susan Sarandon, who is always just awesome. I mean, just an awesome human being, and she uses her what celebrity power she has. She uses it for good, uses it for the moral, right in this world, uses it to fight injustice. And I don't know her well. I had lunch with her once, and we were at a couple of protests together. But wonderful human being. Every time I've ever seen, she is on the right side of history and the right side of any given issue. She was dropped by her talent agency because she supports Gaza, because she's anti-genocide, because she's anti-ethnic cleansing. She has been dropped by her talent agency, which is such an insane. I mean, to just the idea of like, we're not working with you anymore because you're anti-genocide is so just, what horrible times we live in. But so Newsweek then put out an article about all the public figures defending Susan Sarandon. Now, here's the thing: it's not actually the writing in it is not actually negative. They're not calling us all horrible traitors, but I think there's two possibilities. The only reason you really write an article about an article like this is in order to try and get others, those of us who support her, to have ramifications, guilt by association, in order to get, I don't have a talent agency, but they don't know that. So in order to get me dropped by my agent or manager, again, none of which I have, but they don't know that. In order to get me to lose, maybe Patreon will cut me off, or YouTube will cut me off. So it's often a guilt by association thing. But the other thing may be because, let's face it, I'm not as famous as, I don't even know who to give as an example, but some of these maniacs, Sean Penn and those type of people who are supporting one U.S.-backed horror show after another. Because I'm not some huge name, it's possible that they wrote this article in order to say, look, these are not very well-known people who support Susan Sarandon. Ha, ha, ha. She doesn't have the big stars backing her. I don't know if maybe that was the goal, but even though the writing seems kind of positive, I think it's meant to kind of harm those of us who are connected to it. So it starts off with here are all the public figures that are defending Susan Sarandon. And, it says Sarandon has been vocal about her support of Palestine. Then number one on the list, leecamp. Camp is a comedian, writer, podcaster, news journalist, and commentator. Both he and Sarandon attended a rally against the Dakota Access Pipeline in 2016. Guilt by association. They know each other. And then they post my tweet, which I put out. Susan Sarandon is one of the most principled, courageous, and bold people I know. She's always on the right side of history, and she always stands up for the oppressed. Keep fighting, Susan. And number two on the list, Cornel West, a political activist and social critic, Cornel West. So, and again, why would you put me ahead of Cornel West? It's like, he was one of the elders of Zion in the Matrix movies. Doesn't he get first billing? Like, how does he not get first billing? Anyway, not that I don't think I'm great, but I think Cornel West should have gone first on that list. But so there I am getting, again, attacked might be a strong word because nothing they say is negative, but I don't think you put out an article like this unless you're trying to harm those of us by our connection to Susan Sarandon. By the way, Aaron Mate is also on the list because I quoted him earlier, Nina Turner, Brianna Joy Gray. Anyway, just thought I'd bring that to you. You can read the whole article on Newsweek if you really feel like it. Nothing much there other than a list of us who support Susan Sarandon. And again, nothing much there points to why put out that list. Oh, just to try and see if you can get other people to be dropped by their talent agency, or maybe, harm Cornel West's campaign. Not that he can beat yardrock2024.com. No, Cornell's excellent. Not as good as Yard Rock, but he's excellent. He's pretty good. He's pretty good. Okay. Let's get to Ukraine. And the fact that you have a top Ukrainian member of parliament now confirming something I said 18 months ago or whatever it was. Confirming something that essentially only independent media was covering a year and a half ago that would have ended the proxy war in Ukraine. Ended it. And now you have top Ukrainian officials confirming it. Okay, that I'm going to bring you at rumble.com/leecamp. If you are watching this there, nothing changes. It will also continue at locals on my locals page, leecamp.net. I know leecamp.com is on the screen, but leecamp.net takes you to my locals page. And locals, I'm going to bring you an extra segment, actually, your own special segment for all the members over at locals. At the end of this episode, I will be bringing you that. But for everyone else, if you want to keep watching for free, go to rumble.com/leecamp. It is free to keep watching there, free to comment. Rumble.com/leecamp. Join me over there, and I will reveal to you what it is that a top Ukrainian member of parliament has now admitted that I have been saying for months. Many independent media people have said for months. Mainstream media would never tell you because it upends the entire U.S. narrative. All right, rumble.com/leecamp. Join me over there. Oh, also, for those of you who haven't seen it, I have a new episode a brand new show. I have a new show. First episode just came out. It is the top 11 companies that are supporting this genocide by Israel. And it's comedy, it's information, it's like Redacted Tonight. If you are a fan of Redacted Tonight, it's a lot like that. And I hope you will check it out. The easiest way to find it is at leecamp.com, which is on the screen, leecamp.com. You can watch it there. It's 8 minutes long, but I hope you will check it out. Leecamp.com is where you can see that video. But for the rest of this live stream, rumble.com/leecamp, and we will continue right